All right, so we're looking at Unit 1, Section 1, 1.1. All right, so our goal in this is to be able to identify the parts of a radical expression. All right, so when I'm looking at this and I'm thinking big picture, right? So you remember the big picture. We had the concept in the middle. Here, we're dealing with expressions, right? So we're in this box right here. We're going to be dealing with expressions, not equations. We're not graphing anything, and we're not applying this to real-world situations just yet. But these are just expressions. So everything that you see on the in 1.1 is going to be an expression. Right? There's only going to be a statement. All right. So I want you to recall for a minute. Recall what a radical really is. Okay, a radical, or in radicals, are the opposite of an exponent. All right, so for example, if we had 3 squared, or 3 raised to the second power, the meaning is 3 times itself 2 times. So I'd have 3 times 3, right? Which we know to be 9. Well, 3 squared is 9, right? Well, the opposite, so we can go big. Well, how do I go from 9 down to 3? Well, the square root of 9 is 3. So that's what a radical is. Usually takes a bigger number and makes it much, much smaller. Much smaller. All right, so we have the radical symbol. Here's the radical symbol. And the radical symbol has 2 main parts. All right, our goal is to identify the parts of a radical expression. Well, here's a radical, and it's an expression because there's no equation sign. Excuse me while I get out this brand new pack of pens. And the radical has 2 main parts. The first part is the index. The second part is the radicand. All right, radicand. It's kind of a weird word, but a radicand. A radicand is anything underneath the radical. All right, so we need to understand these parts here. So the index, that is related to the exponent. So my exponent up here was a 2. The index on a square root, I know it's not there, but if it were there, it'd be a 2 right there, a little 2. All right, so the index is directly related with the exponent. The radicand is everything, and I'm going to use the word inside, everything inside the radical. And in general, when we say these things, or when we read it, or when we say it, we are going to use the phrasing, it is the blank root of blank. And we would put our index here. So the index root of the radicand. So here would be our radicand. Go into that here in just a second. All right, so let's take a look at an example here. Identify. You're going to get this. The directions on a homework question, the directions on a test or something. You're going to say, identify the index and radicand of the following expression. So those are the directions, all right? So we're going to get something that looks like this. So the index, is there an index here? Well, technically yes, but the reality is that it's blank. All right, so this is really my index here. Whenever it's blank, the index is always going to be a 2. And the radicand for this one is going to be 9. And we would say that the way we would say it is we would say the second root of 9, but more commonly we're going to say the square root of 9. More commonly I would read this as the square root of 9, which I'm sure you're already used to. And if you're not, that's fine. It's time to get used to it. All right, let's take a look at another one here. Ooh. Well, my index on this one, the index is 4. My radicand is y. So my index is a 4, the radicand in this instance is a y. I would read this as, the way I would read this, I would say the fourth root of y. The fourth root of y. All right, let's take a look at 2 more. It kind of can get a little bit disgusting, but I want you to see it just so you can see it. Let's take a look at this one here. Whoa. There's a lot happening here. What is the index? Well, the index is whatever's happening on my front porch. And my front porch here has an x. So here my index is x. My radicand, however, is everything. Remember, it's everything inside the radical. So everything inside the radical here is going to be y plus 4 raised to the third. And I would read this, I'm not going to write it all out, but I would read this, I would say the xth root of y plus 4 cubed. All right, so the x root of y plus 4 cubed. Now this one looks a little disgusting, but I wanted you to see that you can have addition and subtraction inside here. You can have all sorts of things happening inside the radical. So the radicand can be almost anything. And that the index can be almost anything as well. However, the index has to be a whole number, and it has to be greater than 1. So there is no such thing as the first root. It has to be a second, third, a fourth, a fifth, and there are never going to be a fraction here. This is always going to be a whole number. Again, the index will always be a whole number bigger than 1. You know what? Let's write that down. Let's say that index will always be a whole number greater than 1. Has to be bigger than 1. Okay. So let's try one more, and let's take a look at this guy here. I want us to look at one more, and let's see here. All right, so my index here, my index is a 2. My radicand in this instance is going to be x plus 2. And I would say this as the square root of x plus 2.